I was at Rico from StreetScores, and apparently, according to Don Graziano, the Washington Commanders want to trade for a wide receiver before the trade deadline. Now, I went into today, before I saw this news, believing that we would certainly be sellers before the trade deadline, but it sounds like Dan Graziano is saying the opposite. Maybe the Commanders are seeing something in this team that maybe they feel like they can make somewhat of a playoff push this year. Who knows? Either way, apparently we're targeting wide receiver Davante Adams from the Raiders, Deandre Hopkins from the Titans, and a couple of other receivers as well. We're going to dive into all of that and more. But before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned, follow the content. Again, I know it's late, but I'm working on a couple of film sessions. Like I said, I promise y'all I'm going to get y'all at least 2 film sessions for channel members only before we get to this Bengals game Monday night, which I will be live streaming as usual. So make sure y'all pull up for all of that. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, daily videos, no matter what's going on. I really appreciate all the support. But let's go ahead and dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. And so, according to sources today, now I only saw Dan Graziano mention 2 of these receivers in wide receivers Davante Adams and Deontay Johnson. But then I saw another report that said we were looking to potentially trade for either Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams, Panthers wide receiver Deontay Johnson, Jaguars wide receiver Christian Kirk, or you can even throw in Titans wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, were a few of the names listed. I haven't seen that listed by anybody else. Only this source that I'm seeing right now. Dan Graziano is the one that is like the catalyst for all of this chaos with going on right now in Commanders land with the Davante Adams and the Deontay Johnson. But these other 2 names, and Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins, and also there being a few more names listed, I don't know where that's coming from. But either way, just to let you know, that's the chaos going on right now. And it's even crazier too, because Mina Kimes just said that we should do this right before the season started. She predicted that Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams will be a Washington Commander by mid-season. She said, quote, "The Commanders strike me as a team that are going to be like just feisty enough to want to do this trade," unquote, from Mina Kimes herself on her show all the way back on September 4th, a whole 16 days ago. And I'm not gonna lie, I agree with people's reactions to this claim that she made, where shouts out to my boy Marshall at MarshW_7 when he said Mina shoots from the hip on this team, man, suggesting Quinn could be on the hot seat after 1 season just a while ago, and then thinking they'd be in on Davante Adams shows she certainly doesn't have a pulse on this franchise. Then my boy Rio Robinson, I completely agree with this as well. Love Mina Kimes' content, but she don't be having a clue about what's going on with this franchise and this football team, no. And then even at J Daniels MVP said, yeah, I don't see AP making a huge move mid-season. See him waiting until free agency and then making splash moves. Then again, I completely agree with all of those things when I first saw that. I didn't have the time to make a video on that when it happened. I ended up being really busy. I wasn't even in Atlanta at the time. But I was looking at that like, man, I don't know what Mina Kimes thinks she's talking about. But now she doesn't look as crazy with Dan Graziano saying the same thing just 16 days later. So apparently, again, the rumors are that the Commanders would love to add a talented wide receiver leading up to the trade deadline, per Dan Graziano of ESPN. Graziano listed wide receivers Davante Adams, Deontay Johnson as possible candidates based on their contracts and current situations. But again, I want to add the fact that DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk, I'm not sure where those names came from. Dan Graziano only listed Davante Adams and Deontay Johnson. I want to keep emphasizing that so people don't think I'm just clickbaiting over here. And then Dan Graziano, I want to also point out the fact that he is normally one of those guys that's like really tapped into the background things that's going on behind the scenes. He's not just saying this for no reason to clickbait or anything like that. He's one of those guys that's like really in the in crowd when it comes to this lot of stuff. And so he wrote an article back earlier today, like at 6:50 a.m. he put it out on ESPN, titled 2024 NFL Trade Deadline, Top Candidates to Move and Team fits. And then shouts out to Adam Wells, the Bleacher Report, for pretty much summarizing it. He said NFL trade rumors, Cowboys, Chiefs, Rams, Commanders would love to add a talented wide receiver. So he just, from the article that Dan Graziano did, where he's breaking down like edge rushers, wide receivers, quarterbacks even, because I think Bryce Young is even in that article. Shouts out to Adam Wells, a Bleacher Report, for just focusing on the receiver part. And in his article, basically breaking down what Dan Graziano said, he said the Cowboys and the Commanders don't even necessarily have injury issues at the position as much as they just want to get better at the position overall. He also said Washington's offense under new offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury has left a lot to be desired. The top two receivers by yards are running back Austin Eckler with 99 and tight end Zach Ertz with 90. Noah Brown is the Commanders' leading receiver right now among wideouts with 56 yards. And mind you, he's only played one game. He wasn't even active in the week 1 game against the Buccaneers, and against the Giants, he played the least amount of snaps out of any receiver that played in that game. Less than Olamide, less than Deandre Brown, less than Luke McCaffrey, Terry McLaurin, everybody. It's crazy. Also, continuing with the article, Terry McLaurin has 39 yards on 8 receptions. Some of these struggles can be attributed to Jaden Daniels not throwing to receivers when opposing teams get pressure on them. But at the same time, shouts out to Hayden Winks for this stat. If you're wondering why the Commanders wide receivers aren't getting the rock, look no further than a league low 29% target rate when Daniels faces pressure. The league average is 60% right now. So Jaden Daniels just simply isn't looking at his receivers when he's under pressure. And then also, I mean, it's a lot of blame to go around. Cliff Kingsbury isn't necessarily, giving Terry McLaurin a lot more opportunities. Now, there are some opportunities that Cliff Kingsbury, we did the whole film session just a few days ago, that he's drawing up opportunities for Terry McLaurin, and then there's a lot of other things that go wrong. Like, clearly, the Giants especially, and the Buccaneers week 1, Todd Bowles himself even said, after we played the Buccaneers in this press game conference, right after the game, literally said, we're focusing on stopping Terry McLaurin first and foremost, and then we'll just focus on everything else after that. You stop Terry McLaurin first, you worry about everything else. And then you even saw in that Giants game, again, I did a whole film session on this, like who's to blame why Terry McLaurin is not getting the ball. It's a lot of blame to go all around. If you want to go check that out, I do like a full, almost hour-long deep dive, all 22 film session on that. But my point is that a lot of the times it's just been that the opposing defenses not playing about Terry McLaurin. Like, we're going to stop him. First and foremost, you're not getting him the ball, and then we're worried about everybody else after that. There was even one play that I noticed, at least one play, where the Giants were mostly in zone coverage, except for Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin had one guy on him in man coverage. Nobody else was playing man, and then the rest of the field was zone coverage. So they made sure no matter what on that play, Terry McLaurin was not getting the ball regardless of what's going on. So Jaden Daniels is seeing zone coverage from everywhere else on the field, and then you just have this one guy not playing about Terry McLaurin. That's just an example of what I mean. And even outside of that, sometimes the offensive line doesn't give Jaden Daniels enough time to get the ball out of his hands. A lot of the times, Jaden Daniels is not looking up to see him, even when he is open a couple of times, or when he's scrambling because the offensive line allowed pressure to him, especially sometimes even immediately. When he's scrambling, he's not looking to throw. He's scrambling, looking to run, which I can't be too mad at him, but I want him to keep his head up. But that's something that he showed on tape at LSU, and that's a bad habit that he has yet to break so far at the NFL level. And then there's also times where he's missed Terry McLaurin while he's been open. There have been a couple of times where Terry McLaurin's open, and now that Jaden Daniels didn't see him, or he just overthrew him, like that deep shot he could have had to Terry McLaurin in that week 1 Bucks game. So there's a lot of blame to go around. And then also you have Noah Brown, who came in first game of the season, second game of the season for the Commanders, and was immediately getting open and making things so easy for Jaden Daniels that you kind of look at Terry McLaurin like, I mean, what are you doing type of situation. So it's a lot of blame to go around. You can blame Terry McLaurin for some of it, because Terry McLaurin, we looked at that film session, he was not blocking well in the run game, or even when it was like a wide receiver screen for another receiver, he wasn't blocking well. And so I just feel like if he could just give it a little bit more effort on the blocking side and the running route side, maybe we can help. But Terry McLaurin at the same time is one of those guys that you don't only throw it to him when he's open. Like, that's the type of guy you could throw it up there even while he's covering, he can catch it. So I feel like over time, Jaden Daniels can gain that trust with him as well. And then you even saw in practice earlier today him throwing a deep bomb, perfectly accurate, to Terry McLaurin in practice. So we need to see that actually happen in the games. We saw it all off season. We saw it in the preseason where he threw that perfect dime to Deandre Brown, who didn't have any separation at all. Like, we got excited about Deandre Brown as a receiver and everything, but I noted that he didn't have any reception there. That was just a perfect throw from Jaden Daniels. I want Jaden Daniels to make those type of throws to Terry McLaurin, even the times that he's not open. It's the NFL, man. And sometimes Open is relative. Like, it just depends on the skill of the quarterback. It depends on the arm of the quarterback. It depends on timing as well. Maybe he was open for only like 1 or 2 seconds, but you threw it a little too late. You didn't wait long enough for things like that. I'm gonna need the timing to get better. I'm gonna need Jaden Daniels to become a little bit more confident and not waiting for receivers to be wide open. I'm gonna need him to throw it while they're still covered, knowing that timing wise, by the time the ball gets there, he will be open. He just needs to learn to trust guys like Terry McLaurin, especially a little bit more. I think naturally with time, we're going to get better with that. I think Terry McLaurin naturally, first of all, just regression to the mean. There's no way he's going to have this bad of a 2-game stretch at any other point in the rest of the season. I refuse to believe it, no matter how much defense is game playing against them. And also feel like once we open up the offense in other ways, where Jaden Daniels is able to hit Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, this run game is going just as well as it did against the Giants, but we improve on that. Jaden Daniels learns to look up while scrambling. Once teams have to focus on other parts of our offense and can't pay that much attention like they've been the past couple of weeks on Terry McLaurin, that's going to allow him to start to get open more, because now you have all of these other things you really got to worry about. Yeah, you can worry about Terry McLaurin all you want and take him out of the game, but we're going to beat you other ways. So now you got to focus on those other ways, and that will help Terry McLaurin get open more often, which will allow him to get the ball more often. So, and I mean, even some of those Terry McLaurin screens against the Giants, again, we looked at the film session. Luke McCaffrey, most especially, but other receivers as well, were not blocking well on those screens. I mean, you're just one block away from, and instead of it being like a negative 3-yard gain on a Terry McLaurin screen, it's like an 8+ yard gain. Just literally just one Luke McCaffrey block away, and that's affecting his stats. You also had Terry McLaurin, who Jaden Daniels hit him on a really good slant route at some point against the Giants. But then that play was called back because Nick Allegretti was ineligible man down the field for some weird reason. And that was one of those penalties that was really annoying because it didn't help Terry McLaurin. It didn't help Jaden Daniels. It was just a completely unnecessary penalty that didn't contribute to that pass of Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin at all. Like, it didn't have any positive effect on us, but yet it had the power to take away the play. So we're talking about this potentially differently, even if Terry McLaurin somebody blocks better on the screens of Terry McLaurin, and then that catch to him that was completed by Jaden Daniels for about like 15 yards is completed without the penalty. So it's just crazy how small little things can change and could completely change the narrative. But we'll see. I honestly feel like overall, we're going to start just really hitting these guys. I think especially Terry McLaurin specifically. Like, again, that 65-yard deep bomb against the Buccaneers. We're probably talking about the situation completely differently if he hits Terry McLaurin in week 1 against the Buccaneers for a 65-yard touchdown. Now, I think this whole narrative is different. I don't think we're looking at, what's wrong with Terry McLaurin? What's wrong with Cliff Kingsbury's offense? What's wrong with Jaden Daniels? Why can't we use Terry McLaurin? If you add another 65 yards and a touchdown to his stats right now. And so as far as trading for a wide receiver, maybe we want to be a little bit more patient. Again, the trade deadline isn't a couple of months away, so let's wait. It's fun to talk about right now, but let's wait because Noah Brown is showing signs of potential as well. Luke McCaffrey, through 2 weeks of football right now, has put up top 10 wide receiver in the NFL separation advanced stats. Like, he's getting open just as well as anybody else in the NFL right now out of all of the top guys. I just feel like it's early and the offense needs to gel better, and I think that's going to come with time, reps, snaps, more games played, and things like that. But if they are for real about trading for a great receiver before the trade deadline, just say we are. But again, me as Rico of StreetScores, I'm like, I think we should wait before we start talking about making trades in September. I think this is way too early. But if we get to November and like Terry McLaurin's still not as involved as we hope, the offense is not like scoring touchdowns, we're not having enough explosive plays down the field through the passing game, then maybe we can revisit this. But, just to humor the situation, if we do want to pursue a top wide receiver, I would say out of all of the receivers that are on the list, Davante Adams is the best one. But from what he said a couple of months ago, it sounds like he's the one that wants to come here the least out of the entire group of the 4 wide receivers whose names were thrown out there today. I mean, at least with everybody else, we don't know if they want to come here or not. But Davante, remember, he went on Hot Ones and was just completely trashing not only the Commanders team, but the fan base, the stadium, everything. He said, quote, "They're obviously just miserable because the stadium is horrible. The city is not great at all." I mean, literal exact quote from him, like quote unquote situation, talking about the fans, the stadium, the team, and even the city. He said the city is not great, like literally talking about Washington DC as a whole. He doesn't want to be a part of that. So it would be crazy because, first of all, Davante Adams has been complaining about his situation with the Raiders for the past couple of years, and just 19 hours ago he posted on IG, maybe. And so I don't know, maybe he's thinking about buying into the Raiders after they got that interesting win last week, that win where nobody expected them to win. Maybe he's saying maybe because he's like, yeah, I'm actually for real thinking about leaving. Is he possibly considering the Commanders? I don't know, but it would be crazy if we ended up trading for him. And now he's got to play for the one team that he trashed the most I've ever heard him trash out of any other team in the NFL, out of the entire NFL throughout his entire career, man. I haven't heard him say that, or really anybody say that about a particular fan base since like Joakim Noah was talking about Cleveland and like, what's fun in Cleveland? Like, I haven't heard anybody just completely trash an entire city, even outside of their sports team, like Davante Adams did a couple of months ago. That was crazy. I feel like, you know, if the Commanders were more relevant and we had a more successful history in the past 20 years, I feel like that would have went far more viral than it did. But it seems like only our fan base really cared about it, because I guess a lot of other fan bases was like, yeah, I mean, whatever, you know, that's just DC, I guess. Maybe that's how they're looking at it. I feel like that should have went really viral, because that was just completely disrespectful what he said about the Commanders fan base, what he said about DC as a city. I mean, golly, man. So it would be crazy if we ended up trading for him, man. And then when it comes to everybody else, I mean, you got Deontay Johnson, who is the best receiver the Panthers have, and he was a really good wide receiver too there with the Steelers for a couple of years. But again, with him being the best receiver that the Panthers have, that's kind of by default, I'm not gonna lie. Now, I'm not talking down on him at all, because if we traded for him today, he would immediately come here and make our wide receiver core better overall. But I'm just not sure if he's worth trading high value draft picks for. And then there's DeAndre Hopkins, who was a dog in his prime, but how much does he even have left in the tank? Like, with us building for the future above all else right now, I'm not sure if his career span lines up with our rebuild timeline right now. And by the time we're like truly competitive, he may not be very good anymore. Just, you know, due to age, just due to falling out of your prime. We've already seen a drop off in talent and production and multiple injuries from him the past couple of years. So I just don't think that's necessarily worth it if you're building towards the future like this franchise is. And then you also have Christian Kirk, again, whose name was not brought up in the Dan Graziano article, but we're just going to talk about him since we're here anyway. And I still feel like he was drastically overpaid when he reset the receiver market a couple of years ago. That was crazy. He's a pretty good receiver, but for me, I think I'm good. If I were to have to pick anybody, and this is a guy that wasn't included in that list of 4 receivers, I'm thinking that if the Bengals keep playing around with this Jamar Chase and T. Higgins situation, and they end up only paying one of them, most likely Jamar Chase, then signing T. Higgins in the offseason would be my favorite option out of, you got to trade for either one of those 4 guys we already talked about, or sign T. Higgins in the offseason for free without having to trade for him. I know this name isn't listed by Dan Graziano, but this is the way better solution in my personal opinion compared to all of the other guys, especially since we would have to trade for those other guys compared to the prayer that T. Higgins walks away for free from the Bengals without getting tagged. I mean, I know it's a long shot, but that's my best case scenario in my personal opinion. Now, before we get up out of here, I also want to give y'all an injury report update for what happened on Friday. And of course, after tomorrow, Saturday's practice, I will give y'all the injury update for that, because then we'll know who's out, who's questionable, and things like that. But so far today, as you look on the screen right now, what's really interesting, the most notable change is that Emmanuel Forbes, who had thumb surgery last week, went from did not participate on Thursday to limited Friday. Do we see Emmanuel Forbes return back for the Commanders this week? I know a lot of people aren't necessarily excited about seeing Emmanuel Forbes, but at the very least, he can't be worse than what we saw in Michael Davis last year against the Giants trying to cover Malik Neighbors out there. It was bad news for us, man. But at the same time, man, we may be getting Emmanuel Forbes back, and that's pretty notable. But at the same time, the Bengals may be getting T. Higgins back. It looks like he's destined to end up making his 2024 regular season debut against us, sadly. I mean, the timing just ended up like that. I don't know what we did to deserve it, but man, Emmanuel Forbes, please help us, man. Please. And then also, you notice Cleveland Farrell went from do not participate to limited. Jazon Newton went from do not participate to limited. And Dan Quinn already said, I believe yesterday, that they plan on giving Jazon Newton even more snaps going into this game against the Bengals than he had against the Giants. So I'm expecting him to play no matter how limited he is in practice all week. The Benjamin St. Juice has been limited 2 days in a row, but I think he's good to go. Brandon Coleman, full all week, good to go. Quan Martin was limited Thursday, which concerned me, but then he was full Friday, and he was limited before, like, the final practice before we played the Giants, and then he ended up playing the second most snaps out of our, I think only behind, like, Jeremy Chin in the safety group. He was only, like, he played, like, all but, like, maybe 3 to 5 snaps. I think only, like, Benjamin St. Juste, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louisville, and Jeremy Chin played more snaps than him out of the entire defensive side of the football. So I'm guessing he's good to go. He played all of the Giants game even while limited in practice, and then now he's full today as in Friday, so I'm pretty sure he's good to go. Nothing to really worry about there. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, watch out if you're a channel member. I will be working on 2 film sessions to get out to y'all before we play the Bengals Monday night. So between now, Friday night, and Monday night, you're gonna get at least a Johnny Newton and more than likely a Brandon Coleman, and even quite likely a third one and a Brian Robinson film session to just look at all of his snaps and see if he truly had like the best game of his career. I'm really going into the Brian Robinson film session. I'm looking at vision. Brandon Coleman, I'm looking at why his pass protection was so bad, and Johnny Newton, I'm looking for any signs of potential of like, okay, even though he was hurt all off season, this looks like a guy that we could truly believe can take over games for us from the interior part of that defensive line. Now, we're looking for flashes in there. Of course, he didn't record any actual stat that's noteworthy, but we're looking for flashes. Was he double team? All that type of stuff. So be on the lookout for those film sessions if you're a channel member. And of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like. And most importantly, do not leave this video without getting in that comment section. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. And let me know how you feel about this whole wide receiver situation. First of all, let's just start off with the fact that they're assuming that the Commanders will be buyers before the trade deadline rather than sellers. I assumed we were going to be sellers going into that trade deadline. By the way, that we trade away Jahan Johnson and John Ridgeway for less value than you probably should have gotten for them overall. And I mean, again, like the point I made, John Ridgeway, yeah, getting a 6th round pick makes you probably better long term, but it does not make you better for the 2024 season at all. You can't even use that 6th round pick for this 2024 season unless you would have used that to trade for somebody else. But we are clearly building towards the future with the moves and decisions that we've made the past few months. So I just thought this was really interesting. Just first of all, to assume that we'll be buyers instead of sellers. And then on top of that, how do you like those receivers that are listed? Which one would you prefer and why? Or would you prefer T. Higgins? Just wait until the offseason if he doesn't get tagged to sign him as a free agent rather than trading for him. Let me know how you feel about all of that. And I really appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.